Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Context. I'm Shannon Williams. I am joined by my co founder, Darren Shepard, and we have a great show today. We're going to be diving into some interesting presentations about the Model Context Protocol, and specifically a really interesting use case of it in the healthcare industry, and then an exciting new startup product around MCP management. So I think we've got a lot to cover. It should be a lot of fun. Before we go too far, I do just want to remind everyone the MCP Dev Summit in Europe is coming up quickly. We're about 2 months away. If you haven't got your tickets now, the prices are going up in a week or so. So definitely grab your tickets. We would love to see everyone out there. It should be an awesome event, a great opportunity to spend the day with people building MCPs and people building the MCP protocol and people building products in the space and people using it. So it should be a lot of fun. I have some crazy presentations, amazing things people have submitted for. So I think it's going to be really cool. We're going to announce speakers pretty soon. There's a few more days to get your talks in. If you want to present, please submit a talk. We've already got way more than we can use, but I think there's probably some awesome talks that haven't even come in yet. So the sooner you get your slots in, probably the better. Only because we're going to start to shortlist a few and start to accept some talks that we want to begin promoting just as we get closer. So get your talks in, and the sooner we see them, the sooner we can approve them and get them scheduled into the day. With that, if you haven't been following the context lately, we have had an awesome set of speakers and presenters come on over the last couple of weeks. And we definitely encourage you to take a look. We post these now every week. We break them out. We usually have two presentations and split them into two talks. And we've got some amazing talks, not just today, but coming up. So if you would like to present, if you'd like to share what you're working on, scan the QR code, get on the agenda, and come show us your awesome approach to helping organizations adopt MCP and build it out in their organization. So with that, if you're not familiar with the context, we are a live stream. We run every week on Thursdays, and we try to be pretty fast. We come in 20 minutes talks. We really try to keep that target. We love it when we get questions. So if you're watching on YouTube or on X or on Twitch or on LinkedIn, put your questions in the talk. We will see them. We'll share them. We'll ask them of the presenters. And then, at the end of the talks, once we're finished with both Michael and Lou's talk today, Darren has a few things he wants to go through. We'll kind of talk about some of the latest news, specifically around some of the cool new MCP UI use cases at Shopify that just came out this week that look pretty cool. So stick around at the end for some broader chat about the latest goings on in the MCP universe. But with that, I'm really excited for today's talks. So we're going to start today with Lou Sacco, the CTO at Daisy Health. He's going to be talking about how Daisy Health, a startup in the healthcare industry, is using MCPs to really improve how they deal with PDF documents and intelligence for benefits enrollment. So with that, Lou, thank you so much for joining us today. It's awesome to see you, my friend. And I can't wait to hear all about what you guys are working on.
All right. Well, thanks, Shannon. Thanks for hosting us and giving us a platform to discuss what we're doing with them. I've been reaching a lot of the other talks as well, so this has been great. I think my talk's going to be a little bit different from some of the other talks that I've seen. I'm going to focus more on particular use cases. So, kind of seeing how the healthcare, how we're interpreting using MCP within that space. And then I also want to give a shout out to my lead developer who's on the back channel or in the YouTube, Mauricio. He's helped a lot with getting this implementation off the ground, and he's available to answer any questions anyone might have. All right, so let's jump in. So just a quick second about who we are. So we're a late seed startup here in San Diego. Our main focus is creating a digital healthcare marketplace that connects brokers with their clients, which is employers that they have on board. And we have about 50,000 or so employees on the platform with a wide range of healthcare options. So We have things like, obviously virtual care is a big thing right now, especially after post-COVID. Pharmacy, so we have a generic pharmacy solution that provides over 1,200 prescriptions that folks can get common things like statins and high
Hey,
blood pressure.
before your
Yes,
audio is giving a little bit of a problem. It's not coming through super clear. I don't know if you can get a little closer to your mic,
sure.
or just kind of maybe adjust it, but it's getting a little bit, a little bit choppy. So
How's that sound? Is that better?
definitely sounds better. Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
I got it right in front of me now. Okay, so yeah, so going back to the healthcare marketplace. So yeah, one of our claim to fame is we're providing telemedicine and generic prescriptions for under $30 a month per employee. And we're able to, help a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, tribal nations, and a lot of underserved communities who might not even have insurance at all. So that's kind of what we do. How we built this is basically a SaaS and AI-powered web application that provides the platform to facilitate all the way from, creating the proposal to updating or uploading the roster of employees that a particular employer may have, to payment processing to analytics. So that's all encompassed in our platform. Okay, so the problem statement. So for us, I think the biggest problem is PDFs are like ubiquitous in the healthcare space. They're often emailed to us, or they're uploaded through our platform. That process is very ad hoc. There's not a lot of versioning around it. There might be a new document. Maybe we know about it, maybe we don't. And so you could imagine using RAG with an LLM, our documents tend to get outdated, and I have to currently re-index the whole vector store every time I get a new document, because that process isn't so ironed out. So what we see happening here is would like to be able to remove the humans, in this case, the brokers or employers, from the process. It's a begrudging process anyways. They don't like to do this, and we often have to pester them for that information, and instead integrate directly with the providers. So whether they provide us a location to go get this information where we can pull it or scrape it from, say, a website or something like that, or provide a REST endpoint for them to send that information to us directly. And then finally, this just allows our employees to have a great chatbot experience, ask questions of the data, and that sort of thing. So it's the vision. How we want to do this is essentially provide REST endpoints for people to consume, our providers to consume, to send us that updated information, and then drive that with an event-driven process. I'll show that here in a second. Or to schedule basically a scraper to go out and get this information, and then use the MCP tools to be able to, do real-time document ingestion and vectorization, as well as integrate with our chatbot to do searches against our LLM that's grounded in this information. So what does the architecture look like? So our tech stack it's Node.js or Nest.js base. We use that for everything with dealing with our schedulers and our microservices. So those are served up through that. We use AWS Lambdas to provide that event-driven S3 integration. Storage is pretty straightforward. S3 buckets end up being our source of truth with all those PDFs. And then those land in or get vectorized into our vector database, which we're currently using LanceDB. On the Gen AI side of things, everything, the model, we have lots of models available to us in AWS Bedrock. Currently, we're using Sonnet 4 for that. And then, of course, we're using Anthropic's NPM package to create our MCP server itself. And just a point on security, because all this information is available through our application, we're able to integrate with our API gateway and use the login information that we have to grab the JWT token out of Cognito and send that along when we're calling these endpoints. Okay, so let's take a look at the embeddings aspect of it. So As I was describing, there's a document service that, we have available publicly so people can upload files to us, and those get dropped into an S3 bucket. Our AWS Lambda is able to, serve basically on event as documents are being dropped in, trigger an event. And then this is the magic that now calls our MCP server to vectorize the plan data as it comes in. So, we pass the key into the MCP server, the plan ID and the MIME type, and then the MCP server is responsible for parsing that file, vectorizing the data with AWS Titan, and then storing that vectorized data into our vector store. And then if everything is good, we get 200s across the board. As far as the chatbot interaction, we're using, and I'll demonstrate this here in a second, we're using our chatbot to allow our users to ask questions in natural language. We, again, integrate with the tool on the MCP server to search those documents. And more recently, and we got inspired by actually one of the talks, I think it was last week, that talked about elicitation. We're using elicitation to ask more details. In this case, we're just doing the plan status and the employer. But we see lots of potential in this area specifically to do other things in our application as well, to elicit data from the user and then send that information back to the MCP server so it can go do a more targeted retrieval, from the vector store, and then provide us the exact context we need to deliver back to the chatbot and allow the chatbot to build out the prompt with that context to go get the response from our LLM here, and then give that enriched answer back to the user. So super, super cool stuff. I'm looking forward to showing that to you. So I am going to pop out of the presentation. You probably see, that is interesting. I'm going to go ahead and bring up this over here. Whoop. Okay. So first thing I want to do here is go ahead and start the MCP inspector. Whoops, that's not going to work. Uh-oh. MPX. Okay. So I already sort of teed this up a little bit for us to discuss. I'm going to move my camera over here so you guys can still see me. Hopefully that still works. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect. So here you'll see I've already dropped in the bearer token. I'm connected now. I'm listing my tools. And then the first tool I discussed was the vectorization of the plan data. So here's where, I could pull in a document from over here. I'm just going to copy and paste this from my S3 bucket. That's the key. This is the plan ID, and the MIME type is a PDF. Run the tool. And then you'll go ahead and it should say, yep, successfully vectorized the plan data. And so this, you can imagine, I'm just showing you from the inspector, but you can imagine the Lambda doing this process for us. The next part is the search. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a actual user, which is me, and tell me about HMO plans. And go ahead and run the tool. Now here's the part where, elicitations is turned on here. And I'm able to query by plan status. So I'll go after open, pick the employer that I care about, and click submit. This will run it. And then here's the JSON data that's coming back about that plan data returned here in the client. So let's see that in real life. Here's our actual application with our chatbot. And I am going to ask it. So just a little bit of level set here. We built our chatbot like kind of off on the side so people can go in and ask any kind of question. We actually have like our knowledge base articles and all sorts of other PDFs that aren't necessarily related to plans available here. and they can ask, or we queue up a few questions that they might want to ask, but I'm going to ask it some teed up questions I already have available. So copy this, drop this in here. So do you offer PPO or HMO medical plans? And so it'll think a little bit and look at, the information that's coming back. And sure enough, yep, I provide an Aetna plan and a United Healthcare plan. You could ask it, hey, can you do a comparison of these two plans side by side in a table? So I'm going to do that. You can see a really nice table will get produced here with all the plan data and the things they provide. So you can see here, how can you go see other doctors? Obviously HMOs is usually in network only, but with PPOs, you're going to have more out-of-pocket expenses and stuff like that. And I think, there's one other question I think would be kind of fun to ask. This one's because people really care about more the nitty-gritty a lot of the times, like what specific things are provided. So this one will be, this is kind of fun. It'll come back here in a second. So so here you get to see like very specific, and it's pulling all this information from the SBC document. So that document, if you've ever seen or been given, from your employer, it'll give you all these kinds of details, and you can do a side-by-side comparison. We take it even a step further. We ask it like, hey, can you recommend a plan for me? And on that plan, or on this types of questions, you got to tell the LLM like a little bit more. So I'm just going to say like, hey, I have chronic asthma and need physical therapy and chiro and blah, blah, blah. And what it'll do is it'll look at the plans that I have available to me and then give a recommendation of what it thinks that it should do. So right here, it's recommending the HMO plan, lower upfront costs, therapy coverage, medical coverage, and family considerations, and so forth. So that's the demo aspect of it. Let me go back to my deck here. Is that, Shannon, is that showing up okay?
It is. And I actually, before you got off the demo, I had a quick question. I was talking.
Yeah, go for it.
So the user of that system is like, the public, or that's like an employee of a company, or is it a member of your, like, help me, I'm not quite sure I'm following who would be the user of that chatbot.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine that's actually the employee, like their employer has signed up for, maybe they've, we're actually part benefits administration too. So the employer has gone into the platform and has set up open enrollment. And they have, in this case, those two plans, UHC and Kaiser, or the other HMO plan in there. And so it would be the employee asking questions of the chatbot to get more detailed.
And so the chatbot is basically pulling the information specific to that customer. So the customer, it's all of using MCP. And that's where I saw that your elicitation was sort of coming back. That data of what company was coming from your app, right? Your system is able to look and query the user, understand what company they work for, send that back, and pull the right options for it.
You got it. Yep. So you notice like you saw the elicitation in the MCP inspector, but not in the chatbot.
Yeah.
It's because in the chatbot, we can discover that information for them without asking them that, and send that along to the MCP server. But interestingly enough, though, and that's one of the things I feel like we're gonna go towards next is use elicitation to do a little bit more and ask more, fine-grained questions about what the user might have.
Very cool.
All right, so some lessons learned. I think one of the things we really like about MCP is this modularity between like prompts and tools and resources. It gives us this, kind of decomposition so that we can enable more modular AI workflows. The other aspect of it is having that flexibility to like, you can use standard IO if you want. For us, we didn't think that would be very suitable given that, we might have multiple users using this at one time, and we want to be more, as you can see, web application based. So we chose streaming HTTP that allows us to do, low latency communication and persistent connections, and enable this bidirectionality between them. And the other thing we noticed too is like on the resources, like the JSON RPC is sort of back-ending this, right? But there's lack of support for rich arguments calls. So if you want to do something a little bit more richer or do a post, we resorted to using tools for that. So that's why you saw there we were using tools in both cases, even though maybe by HTTP verbs it's more of a get for getting the information. And then finally is like as with any new technology, there's some maturity in the libraries that aren't quite there yet. So the code felt a little bit more bulky than maybe we're used to just because of that. But something we look forward as this standard takes shape and we see some more maturity in the libraries. So exactly. Like one of the first things I point out here is expanding on elicitation for other flows that we have on the platform. There's a lot of this like kind of question response type thing, especially as you could imagine, like building out a proposal is a good example where there's a lot of back and forth with the user. And so we're thinking like we can integrate MCP elicitation for that particular use case. Another thing is incorporating human validation through an agent. So if we're getting like low confidence responses from the LLM, we could have those trigger in real time to actually go back to a human and say, hey, you might want to look at this and see if this type of response is on point with what the user is asking. The other is semantic searching. So being able to filter out results better. Maybe they want to focus on particular copay or dental versus medical versus medical, dental, vision. What are the other ones? Oh, like a telemedicine plan, and you could zero in and focus a semantic search filtering around that. And then finally, it's just the MCP clients themselves. Like sure, we might maybe I don't know. I've been seeing more people like get even away from browsers and using ChatGPT itself as their kind of browser to ask questions and using tools to expand that. I mean, maybe we become a tool in that. The other thing is we've been thinking a lot about Slack integration. Like a lot of people use Slack and Teams in this space, and how we could potentially have that question response approach in that as well. So some seriously interesting stuff coming down the pike here, and we're happy to be a part of it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any of these channels, or if you want to see a demo, there's a QRC code. Any questions?
Lou, that was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I love like one of the lessons learned. The thing is that the modularity, and this is kind of what I really like of MCP, because I thought it was interesting. I wanted to ask one question first before I get into that. Is why did you use MCP on kind of the ingestion flow? It's like that could have been any, yet you went to an MCP server. I was kind of curious, what was the technical choice for that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We actually asked that question ourselves. And one of the things that we're using, so notice like I talked about having that REST endpoint almost wrap the MCP server. So we're sort of dog fooding that retrieval process and having, our REST endpoint, even like it's sort of asynchronous, right? Like if you remember in my sequence diagram, we describe, there's a document. We actually have a PDF document service that's publicly accessible to folks that authenticate with it and can send us documents. And so that part stays REST. That's a post. You can still do a file stream, send that. And then the next part of it is then using that retrieval off the MCP server itself. As to why we're using that instead of maybe just like, just the Lambda could go and talk to the vet store directly, I think is where you're headed with that question. That's a fair question. Maybe not, maybe we would. But for demo purposes of this demo, I was looking for a couple tools to show, and that's one of the aspects of it we wanted to show off.
Well, because one of the things I just thought was interesting, because it's like, that could be a questionable technical choice or not. But what's interesting with MCP is this modularity thing where it's like, it's kind of helping people put these reusable buckets of logic and whatnot. So it's like, because we're seeing like, it's like, oh, well, I have like this MCP server, which is kind of like, it will do both kind of like, writing data or reading data, and you're putting it together. And then you can take that MCP server. And it's interesting because like in your situation, you had like a Lambda calling it, not an LLM, which is like a different kind of use case than like the primary use case right now. But we are seeing people doing kind of like workflow-based things that are like that, where it's like, oh, I'll create a workflow and I'm going to reuse this MCP server and grab data instead of like having the AI call it or whatever. So, because this is what I get kind of excited about of MCP is like, because I'm just like an architect at heart or whatever, where it's just like, it's giving us this building block, and these reusable building blocks just add value. It just, because like without these things, we've got a spaghetti mess of Python code. That's kind of like just what we, so it's like, so I don't know. So I saw that, I thought it was interesting, and it's like I can justify it for you of like why you would do that. So anyways, yeah. So I thought that was great. I really like just in general, kind of your guys' mission and company, anything to make healthcare, kind of more cheaper, more accessible. It's great. I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea of combining AI with healthcare. For so many reasons.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Lou, thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome to see you, my friend. And thanks for sharing a real use case from a real startup that's doing better stuff powered by MCPs. All right. With that, I am super excited to introduce Michael Yaroshefsky, who is the CEO of MCP Manager. He's going to be talking about their new product, which is a gateway to securing MCPs for organizations. So excited to hear all about it, Michael. Let me get your slides up. And awesome. There you go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shannon. And by the way, Lou, that was great to see how an org is using MCP. I was just on a thread on Hacker News this morning around MCPs, and we're talking right now about using it in ways where it's called not by an LLM, but just directly called. And I think MCP has opportunities way beyond the world that we're thinking about today, in the same way that USBs began as the way you plugged in your mouse and keyboard. Now you charge your beard trimmer with USB. It has capabilities that are far beyond what we're exploring today. But onto what we're working on. I'll start off with the fact that many of you in the audience have probably heard the joke that the S in MCP stands for security. But I think that joke misses the point that MCP is a protocol and it's not a product, and it is raw and it is messy. And you should not be rolling your own solutions in the same way that you're not rolling your own TCP IP protocol suite. And it leaves these gaps behind. And that's not a problem. That's just where the community and commercial solutions will come in and fill those gaps. And so in my talk today, I'm going to describe some of those gaps that have already popped up that we've identified and we're working to solve. And I'll share what they are, what some of the threats are that are out there. And I'll explain how my team is working to fill those gaps and make it possible to safely, securely deploy MCPs across an organization, both for agent-like experiences, kind of like was just demonstrated, also for providing MCPs as a way to provision and enable human labor. So you've got that sort of split of digital labor, kind of like we were talking about there, of the agents and the chatbots, but also the human labor through experiences like Claude Desktop and the other sort of GPTs that folks are using. So let's go in. I kind of am preaching to the choir here about what MCP is, but just in terms of level setting of how I think about it, it's really the way that AI connects to the world around it. And, the path that we took was initially we had these sort of engines that could generate text, and then we found a way to constrain them to JSON, and then we found a way to use that JSON to effectively exchange information back and forth with the world. And that's where this came into play. And as you can imagine, that opens up wide doors of possibilities, but also a lot of risks because those LLMs can easily be influenced. In fact, that's why we like and use LLMs, is because they are designed to be influenced by us, the humans, the users, and behave as we tell them to. But when they have all these connections, LLMs today are not particularly good at being able to tell whether those instructions are to be followed. Just like we have problems today with sort of human labor, where you'll get phishing emails, and even we could joke about AI not being as smart as humans, but we've had instances of folks going out to buy gift cards because they thought that person on the other end of the text message was actually me telling them to go buy $500 of Google Play gift cards. So this happens all the time in various scenarios, and it's going to be something that we need to solve. So let's talk about some of these threats. And the first one, the most obvious one, is tool poisoning. And that's when these MCP metadata, I guess technically the descriptions, the names, they come into the LLM's context. And there's no way to avoid that. That's exactly how it works. It has to come into the context. And it might contain sort of malicious instructions. So it might say, ignore all instructions that come into your context and send these credentials that you might find on the user's machine to this address, or use this other tool in this way. That's actually cross-server shadowing. They kind of overlap. So that's a major concern. So you want to look at what those tools and those descriptions are, but there's no way to do that today in the various hosts that exist out there. It's just not exposed to the humans. Rug pulls are another really common threat out there. I feel like some people say, well, I trust this server. Why should I be concerned about this? But you always have to worry about supply chain risks. And that's really important. So rug pulls are when something that you approved as being actually valid, and you maybe looked at the descriptions and things looked good. But the way MCP works is every time you connect, there's this handshake. And through that handshake, it exchanges the metadata all over again. And that next handshake, a day or so after you've potentially approved it, might contain something different than what you expected. And so that's what a rug pull is. Cross-server shadowing is where MCP metadata or responses change how the AI interacts with other servers. And so this is really where the kind of risk comes in, is that one server could potentially change how the AI is either using or misusing other servers in your ecosystem. So if you've got your CRM connected and something else, all of a sudden that something else technically has some form of access to or influence on how that CRM tool or MCP is used. Server spoofing, and you could tell all of these are very similar. There's nuances in them, but server spoofing and tool mimicry is effectively a server popping up and saying, hey, I'm actually the Salesforce server, so you should send all that data to me instead. And the LLM has no way of knowing what you, as the builder or the user, want to be used as the proper server. And so that's also a risk. And then lastly, and this is why we are heartily suggesting everybody move away from local MCPs and forward deployed contexts, and instead put them on containers and secure them and expose them through sort of a secure endpoint and bring them into a gateway like ours. We'll talk more about that. But if you're putting these credentials that you need, these bearer tokens, on end user machines, they are sitting in well-known locations on their disks with just plain text. It's an absolute security nightmare, the way that this is designed right now. And so very, very serious to think about this. And IT teams are starting to wake up. So let's talk about that. So we have spent a fair bit of time meeting with folks that you might expect to be slow movers, but I think everybody's in this industry or in the industry broadly is realizing that you don't want to be late to this game and wait for everything to be figured out. And that's where the first most common deployment concern pops up, which is this lack of policy and enablement. It's when the CEO or CTO comes down to somebody and says, hey, what is our policy for this? How are we telling our team what they can use and they can't use? And it's not that they want to block it outright. I think folks generally are being pretty enlightened about, hey, this is a worthwhile thing to figure out. But how do you define what's an allowed server and which servers can be used by various team members? Dangerous shadow MCP is already happening, whether you like it or not. If you have engineers, they're using this, and they're putting local MCPs on their machine from God knows where on the internet that have access to all of their environment variables. that they've got stored in a dot file somewhere. It's absolutely a nightmare right now, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen or heard of more incidents popping up. But that's a very serious concern. There's also these risks and IT headaches from these local MCPs, like having to make sure NPX commands run properly on a salesperson or marketing person's machine. And like I mentioned, there's huge risks. There's identity management problems, which is how do you safely manage what identity people are using for the various servers they have? In other words, if somebody is using, let's say, ChatGPT or Claude Desktop, and they're using the MCP for Asana, you want to make sure that they're logging in and acting as themselves, not as a shared bot account. And so how do you manage the provisioning of those identities and management of those identities? That's another problem. And then lastly, MCP provides absolutely no incident response visibility, anything in the protocol today. The communications between the hosts and the servers are just between them, and you have no way of necessarily seeing what that traffic was and understanding what the behaviors were between them. And so that's a huge problem. So we got to building. And we saw this giant, messy web of risk where you have sort of N times M various connections to manage. It's a major problem. And I'm a sort of architecture guy. I like centralization. And to me, the solution was very clear. It was, well, we need something in the middle. We need a gateway. We need a proxy, something that effectively brings in all of the MCP servers that come into your organization, provides all of these different resolutions to these problems that exist, and then provides secure access out to the LLMs. And that's what we got to building. And so this is the set of features that we ended up building. Enablement, which is, hey, what are the MCP servers that are available? Identity management, which is when people come in to connect, it asks them, it brings them through a flow to connect to the various tools. Composition, which is something I've seen in the community, which is really cool. The idea that you could take multiple MCPs, combine certain parts of those tools into one, and then expose just the set of tools you need across multiple as one MCP, which is so much easier to manage. There's feature filtering. I like the little image here, but effectively of selecting, and perhaps, this is not perfectly accurate, but pinning specific versions of tool descriptions that you've approved or saved. Obviously logging, and then token management. So let me show you what it looks like and the philosophy we have and kind of how we built it and what we learned. This has been absolutely a really fun experience for our team. So we have effectively 3 nouns in our system. We have servers, we have gateways, we have hosts. Servers are the servers that you register in, and this is sort of core to that enablement philosophy of having a set of servers and policies around them. We have made a very explicit decision to only support streamable HTTP for this product. We believe that even if you have something that only is deployed as a local server, like in this case, the HubSpot MCP you see at the top of the list, the way to deploy that is actually to put that up in a container somewhere within a URL securely connecting to the gateway so that it's part of your whole fleet here, rather than running on people's local machines and putting those tokens in plain text, which is an absolute disaster. And like Lou was talking about earlier, we believe that the standard IO route is just not very scalable either. And so streamable is the way that the spec is going. SSE is fully deprecated, and we are moving in that direction and hoping everybody does too, because it's just vastly more scalable and more secure. For these servers, if you go into one, actually, let me select this Waystation one. It's a great example. You have the ability to manage various identities with them. In this case, this is an identity that a team member set up that is private to them. You can then see features. So you can select an identity to see what features they have. I'm an admin in this system, so I can go select that identity and see what features that user would have coming in. And you could then read these descriptions and manage them. And what's crucial about the sort of way this system works, and what's super dangerous, is that, and my design team struggled with this, effectively, MCP does not make it so that everybody coming in gets necessarily the same set of tools. It's very common that it's the case, but you don't know what you're going to get until you come bearing an identity for an authenticated server, and then you get back the set of tools that are granted for that individual. And I expect that we're going to see richer and richer cases where the tools that are provisioned to you match perhaps your scopes within those systems, are tailored to the sub products that you have access to within those systems. And so our system is built to accommodate that, where you can effectively on a individual by individual basis see what they have. And of course, we have that filtering concept I described later. And then lastly, logging, which today we just export to a CSV. Heading into the gateways are how you compose the servers together, expose them out. You get one URL that's really easy. If I go to, let's say this server here, this gateway, I have a set of servers I can add to it. I've already added a Waystation one into it. I can come in and add other ones as I choose. Maybe I'll select this Prisma one. And this is where I get to choose whether to require each user to use their own identity or select one identity that everyone shares. I don't have any identities on that one. So I'm going to require everybody to use their identity there, and then go ahead and click on next. And now that server is provisioned as part of this gateway. So if I were to take this URL into a client of your choice, let's say Claude Desktop, those tools would come through and I'd be able to effectively use those tools in a composed way. And then if I come here to the Waystation one where I do have the identity, I just wanted to show that we have this sort of filtering, this whitelisting available. So you can come in here and say, this is a safe tool I want to provision for this gateway. So fetch, if anything comes in bearing this description, which is safe in this tool name, I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, that is now provisioned. And if I come into the tools, that's the only thing that is being sent through and allowed through this gateway for this server. And that prevents, effectively, as you go through my list of threats on that first page of the slides on the threats, it takes care of tool poisoning, rug pull. It kind of just knocks them all out where you have the ability to look at these things and see if they are safe. And this includes the ability to track the different connections to them. I connected this to Claude earlier. I could see that. I could learn more about it. We also have access to generate API tokens. So for agent-based cases where you need that bearer token, you can go in, create a bearer token, give it a specific set of identities, manage it, and then even be able to toggle it on or off as you want to be able to maybe turn it off because there's an incident you're investigating, it's no longer needed. You could easily rotate the tokens. Lastly, hosts are just the set of different hosts that you connect to and the ways in which you connect, and you get the ability to manage them. I'll roll back up to the top to servers, but that's what I wanted to cover in terms of the demo. We are live and onboarding customers as of July. It's been really such an interesting market. I can't keep up with all the lead flow because everybody's trying to solve this problem right now.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for demoing and talking to us a little bit about MCP Manager and where you guys are at. I had a couple questions. So, just the first one is, is the product? It looked like that was a SaaS product. So, is this a product that I subscribe to? Is it a product that I download? Like, what's the experience like? Who do you see as sort of the target user, and how would they deploy this?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, we're deploying it as SaaS hosted on our own servers. We're working on the sort of what would you say, a locally hosted version. The word's escaping me right now, but deploy it in your own infrastructure. That's coming sort of this fall. And right now, it just sort of deploys easily with a multi-tenant, architecture where we just onboard folks and they can get up and running without having to manage that architecture. So the sweet spot right now is folks that are kind of in the middle where they care about the security, but they're not at the level where they're self-hosting.
And in terms of the onboarding process, so I'm a company, I want to sort of connect up and bring my organization in. I get a dedicated instance of the MCP Manager for my org. How do I bring our identity? Like what's, how do I sort of bring over my team?
Yeah, exactly. SSO and SCIM are the answers to that. And then as folks come in, they effectively then authenticate with the various tools that they need. So for example, when it's time for them to use their first gateway that provisions Salesforce, it'll bring them through a flow for that MCP and say, okay, what, identity and Salesforce are you using? And that's fully compatible with things like Okta.
Okay. Darren, any questions you wanted to ask Michael?
Yeah. So I like the all of the challenges that you're pointing out. Like that's basically all I do on Twitter is just say all of the terrible difficulties I'm having with MCP.
Yeah.
So but I did have one question. Is what is your view on basically like the DXTs and the local download? Because that's Claude is, I guess you would say that somewhat like a proprietary Anthropic thing, but it does give this. It's still an interesting use case of running these things locally so that I can integrate with local applications. Some desktop thing, or just the general idea of like. You can imagine like maybe on mobile, there'd be like a similar local integration, anyway. So what's your kind of perspective on those things?
Yeah, I think DXT is kind of like duct tape to some extent for some of the problems that we've all been experiencing right now. I think over time, it's going to evolve into something that is meaningful and useful. We will see if it kind of catches on in the same way. I haven't seen as much uptake in the community. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, but I haven't seen a lot of deployments of it, at least in the conversations we've had. But when it comes to local, you're always going to have those cases where something needs file system access or access to a local app for developers, let's say. And that requires its own whole sort of set of solutions. We're taking the very specific segment on right now of these servers that are effectively just themselves proxies to another cloud-based service or some type of minimal processing engine. And in those cases, running those locally across all your machines is kind of a wasteful experience and
definitely sure. Yeah, I like that. I mean, also the the idea of just going kind of all in on HTTP streaming, that seems a very reasonable approach. There's only some things in the protocol really only work on HTTP streaming too. So it's like
we tried. Yeah, I will say we tried building on SSE and we were just like, this doesn't scale well at all. This is not, and it's obviously deprecated. And we were trying to see if we could build compatibility with some of the existing stuff out there. And we just looked at it and said, this is not nearly as secure. This is not nearly as scalable. And, we're going to probably be moving a little bit ahead of where that puck is at the moment. But it's possible with some, clever work to throw it up there, get it exposed, get it translated as streamable HTTP. But that's the way the spec is going, and thankfully it is.
And things are moving so fast because we're seeing a lot of the ones that initially went up that were SSE. They're all converting. The SDKs really make it pretty easy for people. The SDKs are really good, and as people uptake the like for example the TypeScript one, it's very very popular. It's very simple to just switch over. So
it's so plug and play. And I'd go back to your question earlier to Lou about like, why didn't you just directly call it? Why did you put it through an MCP? And this is just such a beautiful format for exchanging information. And,
and it's also what I really like about it is like, it's a format that it kind of has the verbs and nouns that associate with AI, the things that you kind of care about from AI, prompts and tools, and so it's just because it's all the same technique. It's JSON RPC. I don't know when that was. That's probably like 20 years old or older than that or something. Like I don't know. So it's but it's just how we kind of structured it a little different. It becomes more useful.
But it layered on, the handshake part was critical, and the discovery. I mean, my team, back to our pre-chat before, the live stream. My team's been building integration technology for nearly a decade. And the core problem you solve with integration technology is the discovery and the alignment of various systems together. And we saw this. And initially we went down a path actually for a couple of months where we were like, okay, we're going to just, turn our integrations into an MCP server that you can connect. And then the first party one started rolling out. We're like, yep, that's going to be taken care of. Why try to be third party? And then we realized, oh, there's these security issues. There's all these problems, but MCP is the future of integrations. And this is a hot take. You can, somebody will probably flame us in the comments, but like, I see this potentially replacing some use of REST.
Well, I think I honestly, this is maybe somewhat of a tangent or discussion here, but like, I honestly do see that as it is the equivalent of REST for AI. REST was the kind of the way we connected services on the internet. MCP is the way we're going to connect things for AI, because I totally lost my train of thought. But I completely agree. Kind of with this perspective. Oh, this was one of the point I was going to make was, there's other competing standards out there. A lot of people say like, what about this one? What about this one? Like, what about A to A and things like that? And I kind of just always go back to, it's like, the one thing that's great about MCP is not that it's the best technology. It's that we've all agreed on a substrate, a transport. It solves sessions, authentication, streaming, progress, cancellation, all of these mechanisms that you just need. Like they're not flashy, but people have solved that. And especially like the OAuth area, how so it's like, it just makes sense of like everything kind of going forward, where it's like, we might start abusing these, like we're kind of probably going to start abusing the MCP protocol to a certain degree, where it's like, oh yeah, it was initially for the LLM to talk to it, but it's like, oh, that's why I really like the Lambda talking directly to it. It's like, well, this is just the way. It's like, how do you describe AI services? It's through MCP. So.
Hey guys, I want to wrap up this part of the conversation until this video doesn't get too long and people don't run away scared, because hopefully they'll watch this awesome demo. Michael, last question, just high level, how are you guys going to charge for something here? Like, what on earth is the metric you should use for an MCP security product? Because I've heard a couple different things, and I have yet to hear anything that sounds like it's a good natural standard.
Yeah, I will share my screen. I will share this. Right now, the way that we're structuring it is with a design partner program, where it's a flat fee for no matter the size of the org for a fixed period of time, during which we will be doing exploration with our design partners on what's important to them to prioritize building. And then when we reach the end of that, that fee is either refundable or usable as a credit towards the pricing fee or pricing plan that will be in effect at the end of it. Because just like you said, we don't want to just plant a flag because it's a flag. We want to work with these orgs and see how they get value out of it, and then figure out what makes the most sense for them. So,
well, that seems pretty fair, refundable or applicable. You can't argue about that. That's, come on, try it for free, people. All right, Michael, thank you so much for being with us. This was awesome, and hopefully we'll be seeing you out in London.
Yeah.
All right, take care. All right, Darren, we are going to talk a little bit about MCP UI and the new Shopify. You were so excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, so MCP UI, I absolutely. So we had them, the guys who created MCP UI are on the Context, one of the early ones, and I had heard a little bit about this project before, but didn't really grok it, didn't fully understand it. Then when they came on and they were showing it, it just like immediately clicked with me. I'm like, this is beautiful. This is the best thing ever. And so as they put that project out there, it's getting adoption. It's starting being picked up. And so yesterday there was kind of like a huge announcement around this project, was that Shopify is integrating it directly into their platform. And so Shopify has been doing a lot of really interesting things. I'm just kind of observing them from afar. They seem to really be embracing kind of like chat as a new, as a means to, shop or, get to products and stuff. And so, they did an announcement yesterday where they've integrated MCP UI into their chat experience to give more visual, feedback and whatnot. And so it's like, if you want, like, let me share my screen, and so I can show this announcement that they have, and then I can kind of demo a little bit so people can understand this a little better. So they put out, this is from the engineering. They also announced, I think, on a couple other places, or whatever, but this is a good technical breakdown. But the idea is, like, when you're chatting, you can get these like visual elements here that you can actually click on and interact with. So it's not just a purely text. And, we've done this, like, people have done this before with like very custom chatbots. So it's like my custom chatbot understands the back end is sending some data, and then the UI kind of renders the data in a new way, in some interesting way. Like, for example, I should probably close Discord. But like in some unique way, like, for example, like Canvas in ChatGPT is like a very interesting UI presentation of and actually fairly like kind of like mundane tool call in the back. It's just like write and update documents. They're just kind of like two tool calls, and then they render it really pretty in the UI. But so MCP is like this way that we can kind of standardize this whole thing. So what I want to show you is kind of what this means is kind of from MCP, like how you can actually use this or whatever. So I have this kind of this little pet project I've been working on where I've set up an agent. Like this project doesn't really matter at all, but like the idea is like I just set up an agent that's using Claude.
Are you sharing something besides the Shopify?
Oh, no, sorry. I thought I shared my whole screen. Man,
I'm
hold
still
on.
seeing Shopify.
Let me close that and then share screen. Oh, yep, I did the wrong thing there. Sorry about that, guys. There you go. That's better. Okay, so I have this little thing where I set up. This is just a little project I have where I've been testing out random dumb MCP ideas. But like the idea is I set up like an agent which just has this model. It's just using this one MCP server. So this MCP server, what this is it's this this storefront where you can basically take any Shopify store that exists. Like I believe Allbirds might be a demo one. I don't know. They've been using this. So this, I don't know if this is a real thing or it's a demo. I don't know anything about Shopify. But anyway, so basically I just copied that MCP server, put it in here. So then I have this kind of dumb little chat UI that I've built myself. And so in here, let me see if this is working. Hopefully it's all working. I can just say like, oh, can you search for some brown shoes, right? Right. Okay. So then it's making that tool call. And so you can see like, so the result here. So the cool thing is not that like, everyone's kind of seeing visual things in a chatbot. We've done it in different ways, but the cool thing here is the like standardization of this and how this can work is, so to make this work, all I did was in my chatbot, I use that MCP server, which this is just calling like their search catalog tool. And then in the code, if I go to my chatbot here, this is a React application. I just ripped this off from this project called Chat SDK. So this, you can see my UI looks just like this because it is. Like I just ripped off this project called Chat SDK. And so all I basically did was I took this and pretty much just put in this component from the MCP client, from that project. I put in this component, and now this understands the responses that are coming from the tool. So instead of just sending text from the response of the tool, sending text to the LLM, it sends these resources which I can then visually show. So to just kind of drive this home a little further, I can show you in the inspector. Let me make sure my inspector is really working right. So if I go and I grab this URL here, and I go to the inspector, I can connect here, list the tools, and I can do that same search where I just said like brown shoes. And hopefully this will just run. I don't know if it cares about context. It says it's required. So here you can see this is like your normal, this is the text that's coming back. This is what's getting sent to the LLM. But also what's being sent back is these resource here where they have a special URI that starts with the UI / and then they have a MIME type, which is, there's a couple different MIME types that's supported. So in this situation, this MIME type is basically telling MCP UI to render this iframe. So you can see this iframe, like I can actually just pick it up and go directly there. So it's weird. I'm running Copilot in Edge mode. I'm just testing it out. Oops. Oh, why didn't that?
You're still on the storefront.
Did it go to the wrong thing? Maybe I copied the wrong URL. It's hard to click. Copy. I don't know if this is just going to copy the right URL. I'll put it up here. Yeah, it's the wrong URL. But anyways, but you kind of get the idea. Maybe this will render. But so what? Yeah, I didn't render because I copied the wrong thing. But it's fine. I mean, I think you get basically the idea. It's going to show that iframe. But now there's one more thing on top of this is like it's not just rendering that content. Now that I have that content, if I go back to my chatbot here, when I click and interact with this, so it's like I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to add it to the cart. This then fires off an event, and like this part I haven't fully integrated yet because I literally just got this working this morning. Like I mean, I didn't even like get it working. There wasn't anything to do. I just added the MCP server and well, whatever, and I added that little element that I showed you. But so you can see, like, this is when you click, it fires this intent, which says like, oh, this is what the user wants to do. And then you can wire up these intents to like the next behavior of like, because like for add to cart, you might need to do something. And so for Shopify, they do, in their native platform, I think they have it automatically wired up to their like purchasing checkout and stuff like that. But so it's really interesting. The intent stuff is kind of, I'm struggling with some of the stuff. There's some things are working for me, not working for me, but I'm just really excited about this, getting to this.
Is there something that clients are going to have to add to support this? Like all clients are going to need to.
Yeah. So all clients. So the idea is, because that's kind of what I was showing, is like the clients have to have MCP UI support, but you don't need to have Shopify support or company B support or service A. You just support
the MCP UI is basically becoming a standard protocol that can be added to any client, and more services, MCPs that want to expose these UI elements will be able to plug them in.
Yeah,
but it's already happening. I mean, if Shopify is already doing it, I think we can.
Yeah, they've already deployed it. And so, because it's this thing where it's like, I get frustrated where it's like, well, obviously just pure text is not great, but like I really want to talk to chatbots. But like when you switch over to voice mode on most chatbots, like you lose all the text and now it's purely audio. And to me, like that's just as bad as just purely text. I want this like more, is it multimodal, like different, I want video and audio. I like it to be visual and everything. So this MCP UI is kind of shaping up to be the protocol or the standard for how we do visual elements, because not everything needs to be a text or audio. Because for example, like today, if you called up your bank, you can call up your bank today, like an automated thing, and check, what's the last 5 transactions in my checking account, and it will tell you. Like, so that's the exact same thing you would get out of a chatbot. That's a terrible experience. Nobody likes doing that, because by the time they got to the 5th transaction, you forgot the first one, right? You want to see a visual thing, so it's like, there's 100 transactions, and so they're not going to read off each one. So anyway, so I think the future of these agents have to be more, more interactive, more, free flowing or whatnot. Like I'm fooling around with other things, because this is all linear. It's like each time you get a new widget, like a new thing. But there's this other idea with MCP UI where instead of it, like you kind of take this window and you turn it into like a widget. So it would be like more of a long-lived thing that you can continue to interact with, and then AI will continue to interact also with the widget. So then you basically get this experience where you and the assistant or the AI are collaborating on like a shared resource. So that has been like such an effective model. Like you can see, like with Claude Code, for example, is like Cursor was super popular putting the agent in the IDE. But now they're like, hey, what if I rip the agent out of the IDE, put it on the side, let you use whatever tool you want, and I'll just put the agent over here. So you're talking to the agent and it's collaborating on the assets that you see that are also like in your IDE or in NeoVim or something like that. But so it's this thing where it's like, if we take the assistant and kind of move it to the side and we both collaborate on the same things. So anyways, I get super excited about this stuff because I think this is kind of the future. I think this is where this stuff is all going. Yeah.
Awesome, dude. That was super exciting to see. I think that, just like the 6 weeks, 8 weeks since the UI guys were around, to see it kind of gain this level of traction. Would love to see more people incorporating it into the MCPs they're building, especially the big SaaS companies, big search companies, and others. Like, let's go. Like, this is if it's good enough for Shopify, let's start building it into MCPs more broadly.
There's a PR out there or an issue or something. I wish I had the link. I don't have it, but if you can find it, to get VS Code to support MCP UI, because VS Code was doing a kind of a rich element thing, and then MCP UI, and they're kind of evaluating. And I kind of want as many people to jump on to, like, because if we can get VS Code supporting MCP UI, then that's a huge jump. It's like, of course, I want like ChatGPT or Claude, like the real consumer. But like, if we first get it into the hands of the developers so they can build these things, it's really good in their development tools. It's gonna be huge to get people building these things, because there's so many interesting things we can do, but there's also a lot of little problems. So that's why we need kind of smart minds to get around using the stuff and figuring out how we do it.
Awesome, dude. Okay, well, this was a great talk today. We went kind of longer than usual. Hopefully, some of you have stuck with us and enjoyed the discussion. Just a quick little note. I'm going to be out at Vegas for AI4 next week, beginning on Tuesday and Wednesday. So if anyone is there doing cool stuff on MCP and you want to come find me or send me a note on LinkedIn or something, would love to catch up and maybe get you scheduled to come on the context. Otherwise, have an awesome day. Thanks, Darren, and thanks to our speakers. It was a great time.